A very special artist, Binod Bihari Mukherjee, once said, "The person who is not roused by a pulsating image, a small touch or sound, can make no sense of the word beauty. A person who neither knows nor thinks beyond his worldly needs has no use for beauty." We'd like to welcome all of you to the studio today. I promise an amazing story and a chance to wander through the complicated labyrinth of life and mind of a very talented person. But now let's start by stepping into a virtual gallery and taking a sneak peek at the beauty created by today's guest. Now it's time to present our guest. But sorry, one more quotation by the guest himself. Let me just read it. "I believe that my vision enhances my creativity by allowing me to see only things that are relevant to the goals I set in creating my artwork. It allows me to connect deeper with my objectives. It also prevents me from unneeded distraction, for instance, concentrating on too many details while missing the important things like composition or color balance." And now finally let me introduce Dmitry Yanushkevich, a painter, a sculptor, and a musician. Dmitry, thank you so much for coming to our studio today.
Thank you for having me.
I have so many questions to ask and prepared the full stack of them. It was very tempting and intuitive to simply go chronologically starting with your childhood, but I want to get one difficult but critical to our conversation question off the table so we can focus more on your art. What happened when you were 12?
Well, when I was 12, I had a pretty bad flu, and because of the flu, I started losing my vision. So my parents really panicked, and they took me to a hospital, and the doctors, of course, examined me, and they thought, that I actually had a tumor. Well, because they thought their idea is that the tumor was pressing on an optical nerve, and that was in Moscow. Mm-hmm. So basically, the treatment for the tumors were, at that time, radiation. So they gave me lots of radiation, and after that, I was pretty sick. So my parents decided to take me to another doctor, and he examined me again, and he told me actually that there was no tumor, and the radiation was basically unneeded.
So you were misdiagnosed and treated incorrectly.
That's right, yes.
And the radiation did the damage to your optical nerve?
Yes, basically, yes. Wow. That's right.
So your heroic, I would say, mom didn't give up, and she took you to the United States looking for a miracle. Yes. So what did the doctor say here?
Well, the doctors at Stanford examined me, and they thought that basically they told me that the damage was done, and there wasn't really any cure currently available, but they were hoping that maybe in the future there will be something.
Did you go to school?
Yes, I actually went to boarding school. It's called California School for the Blind. It's located in Fremont, and it's a very interesting school, very special school. Besides going to high school, there were art classes and music classes that I attended. There were very special teachers. I painted and I did ceramics.
And you were just 15 years old? And,
pretty much, yeah.
And almost no English?
Yeah, no English, and
that was a very difficult scenario to imagine.
Adaptation was very difficult for him because he arrived in a very bad condition. He was 15 years old when he came, but looked more like 8. This was after radiation and everything he went through back in Russia. Of course, there were difficulties, but gradually he started to feel support here.
Как ты вот начинал чувствовать опору?
So tell me a little bit more about your teachers.
Yeah, I also had a very special teacher. His name was Mr. Siligal, and he was completely blind, but he managed 3 bands and a choir, and he taught everyone who was in there, and he could really tell, you know, if someone was playing the wrong note. Yes.
Did you study music as well?
Yes, I studied music. I can't say I was very good at it, but
It's not what your mom says, but
well, yeah.
but like, who was your teacher and how did you study music?
Well, I also had another piano teacher. Her name is Lena Lebonsky. So, and she taught me basically how to study by ear, and
Right.
I learned a lot from her.
So you graduated from high school. What was next?
Yeah, I also went to college in West Virginia.
And what the major?
Well, I majored in marketing. I graduated, but I realized that art was my calling, and I could not really escape it. So basically, I had to do it.
So you still devoted your life
Right.
to art. Was there any moment in your life when you actually knew that you would be an artist, a painter?
Well, you know, I've been always drawing constantly. It's just been part of me. But when I started losing my vision, you know, I realized I really couldn't live without it. It was just so much part of me. It's, you know, I just couldn't let go of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Да, я как отец хочу сказать, что Дима,
As a father, I want to say that Dmitry is an amazing child, and that despite all of his problems, he was destined to become a painter, because his grandfather is a painter and his parents too. His whole environment somehow contributed to it.
оно как раз способствовало этому.
So and now let's break through the chronology and zoom through time and teleport ourselves to your childhood. What do you remember about it and the environment you were growing up in? So your mom shared a few photos. We'll show it to our viewers. But what are your recollections about your childhood?
Well, I remember I've been constantly doodling and drawing, like I said, and I remember for some reason I've been sitting under a table. I suppose it's just one of the places I could escape.
Tell me a little bit about your parents.
Of course. My mom, she has a very expressive style of art. She does commission portraits. She also paints beautiful landscapes and still lifes. She also teaches, and she works with Bio Ballet Academy. And she did a few backdrops for the play, a Snow Queen play, actually. Yeah.
And what about your dad?
Well, he does. He is a very, very professional artist. He does metaphysical types of paintings. It's he calls it a metaphysics with physics.
So your both parents are master painters, and
Yes.
I mean, I should add that they're quite well known and respected in the kind of artistic circles, right?
I think
Now,
so.
tell me a little bit about your sister. What does she do?
Well, she's also very talented. She could, of course, paint and draw. But right now she is quite proficient in air acrobatics.
We promised our viewers a gallery tour. Let's walk into the room called Family. When I was working on the show, I discovered the whole new to me world of art created by visually impaired or totally blind artists. S.F. Armagan, Lisa Fittipaldi, John Bramblett, just to name a few. And suddenly Binod Bihari Mukherjee, one of the pioneers of Indian modern art. He said once, blindness is a new feeling, a new experience, a new state of being. So Dmitry, how does it resonate with you?
I would say that you have to let your soul, your subconscious, you have to let it out, and the colors within has to come out also.
So it seems like the colors and visions of the soul are stronger than any physical barriers.
Yes, it seems that way.
So let's switch to the most exciting subject, at least to me, it's your thought process, your creative process of turning a white canvas or a pile of clay into something beautiful. But first, another gallery room. What an amazing festival of colors, I must say so. Very impressive paintings, but I'd love to understand better how you make it happen. First of all, how do you decide what to work on next?
Well, when I see a landscape or I see an idea, I have an idea in my head. Sometimes I just read a book or a landscape or like a different object. I set up my own still lifes, I try to find matching sets.
Right.
Basically.
So just imagine yourself in the front of a blank canvas, right? What happens before you actually take a brush into your hands? So how do you prepare?
Well, I have to imagine all in my head. Basically, I have to know the composition, the color balance. I have to know, basically form the paint picture in my mind.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And how do you decide what media to use? Acrylic, oil, others? In which case, which one?
I prefer usually to work in acrylics, but sometimes when I have to work very fast, I use the watercolors.
What is most important to you in your paintings? What does your work aim to say?
It's a sort of a soul-to-soul connection, I think. I try to put in the messages, the feelings, and the associations that I am getting while I'm drawing or painting. I try to, you know, it started all into a painting, and hopefully the viewer could get it back.
For today's conversation, you picked a few important to you paintings. So let's talk a little bit about them, because you picked them for a reason. Probably they have their own stories you want to tell.
Yes.
So let's start with one called Black Town.
The Black Town is a painting. I wrote a story. Basically, it's about this oil refinery, and there's some detective story going behind it. And at the end of the book, you know, everything basically goes out in flame. You know, everything explodes, but you know, some people survive. But that's a big picture, and it's filling.
Yeah, I mean, this painting really talks to me, because in my hometown, we had a neighborhood called Black Town, literally, and it was next to the oil refineries. Now, the next one is In the Hills.
That painting I did outside. My mom takes her students out sometimes to the ranch, horse ranch, and one time I joined her. I was very close to one of the horses. Of course, you understand that it's very difficult to capture the horse because they move constantly, and you know, I had to capture the movement and the energy, of course. So luckily one of the horses came very close to me, and I made this picture with the chalk.
The next one, I think you called it Ship in Sunset.
Yeah, that one also kind of came out in my mind, and I saw it, and there's a lot of different fiction books and tales and stories that I read, and so basically the idea behind it was that this ship, it lost its sails. It went through an ordeal, the storms, the pirates. It's trying to it's leaving home, and it's unknown if it's going to get there or not. Maybe somebody's pursuing it. It's just very, very tense situation, and it's unclear, you know, what's going to happen.
Next one is Snow Town.
Right.
Beautiful one.
Thank you.
One of my favorites.
Well, it's a funny story. My mom started painting this picture, but for some reason she didn't like it. So she thought, I don't know, maybe she wanted to throw it away or paint over, which artists sometimes do. I told her, let me finish it. So I put a few strokes in there, and that's how it came out to be.
And it ended up being a really beautiful one.
Thank you.
And finally, Trumpet with a Candle and Hourglass.
Well, the hourglass obviously means, you know, the time passage. There's something going on in the picture, like, for instance, maybe we can guess that when the time passes, maybe the trumpet starts blowing and the candle lights up, you know, and there's a certain dynamic going on in there.
It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Actually, we do have it in the studio, but
Right.
but it's really beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
So where do you show your art? Where people see this?
Well,
Beauty.
lots of different galleries, like in Carmel, different galleries in Mountain View, Los Altos. People could see it online also.
Были много выставок Диминых и совместных. И недавно совсем была выставка в музее Лос-Алтосе.
We held many solo and group exhibitions featuring Dimitri's work, and recently we had one in a museum in Los Altos. His paintings are also currently displayed in a gallery in New York. I must say that we never mention his issues when we submit his work for various exhibitions, but still people react very well. They really like his work. And when they find out that he is legally blind, they are, of course, shocked. We invited Dimitri's doctors to his exhibitions, and when they saw his paintings, they could not understand how a person with his eyesight could create such works, because he has extremely delicate details in his painting. It's hard to understand, like a miracle.
Any specific stories in mind, like?
You know, like one person told me, you know, they were looking at my still life, and they thought, you know, oh, it looks like a person, like some sort of a portrait. So, but you know, that's the most important thing is, you know, the energy is in there, you know, the emotion is in there.
Who are your biggest influences?
Well, most importantly, my parents, of course, but of course, I also liked artist. His name is Sudin.
Now, I'm curious how you decide when you're done with the painting.
Well, it's a difficult process because, you know, sometimes I...
When to stop? Do you know when to stop?
That's a good question. Because, you know, I think, you know, well, I'm finished. The painting looks good. I come back next day and it's just a mess. So I sometimes start all over or correct some things. And sometimes, of course, my parents help me, and they think, you know, it's done, or there's something needs to be corrected. But because it's an ongoing process, basically.
So yeah, I mean, I remember when we had a conversation. You told me that your father would just hide this painting from you, so you don't touch it anymore.
Yes, yes, that happens. Yeah.
That probably helps.
Right, exactly. That helps a lot. Yeah.
Dmitry, do you follow new developments in the medical world? Any potential cure?
I am aware of a few experimental developments.
No stem cells, something like that, or?
I don't know, but there are a few promising ones.
How about high tech? Does it help you in any way? So
yeah, there's one particular device. It's called Iris Vision, and basically it's a digital magnification device.
So this is a device, and I guess. So how does it work?
Basically, you put it on, and it magnifies. Basically, it helps to see all the details and all the things I usually don't see.
So now you think you will be spending more time on details, or?
You know, I don't think my painting...
Do you even want it? Do you really need it? Or how often do you use it?
Well, I use it sparingly because I don't want to change my painting style. You know, I'm happy with my painting style, but sometimes when I need to see a specific detail, or maybe the way the highlight is displayed, or I don't know, maybe just some minor things, you know, I need to put it in, then, you know, of course I would use it.
So what are your future plans? Let's talk about it a little bit. So what do you have in mind?
You know, I plan to, of course, paint more and create more music, and I haven't done ceramics for a while, so I want to do more, you know, work more in clay and do more, you know, figures, maybe, you know, pots and pans.
Why ceramics?
Like that. Well, you know, I feel, you know, kind of a connection with clay, and you know, it's you know, you basically make anything you want with it, but it's a sort of a kinesthetic, sort of like a feeling, you know, you feel what you're doing, you know. It's hard to explain, but it's just it's a sensation.
I think I'm trying to understand it.
Right, right.
Okay. And here's my final last one. What question would you ask yourself?
Well, the main question is, am I improving? Am I doing things? Am I heading the right direction in terms of painting and creativity? I
guess we need to wrap up. And thank you so much for coming to our studio.
No, thank you. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Right. I'd like to close with one of Dmitry's most intriguing works. It is called Flying Through the Fire. A very respected art critic, Boris Bernstein, explained this piece as follows. The rider rips open the darkness that's filling the brightly lit energy hidden in it. The energy does exist in there. The darkness does not thicken anywhere to the hopeless black of Malevich's square. Light simply needs to be let free, and it shall fill the world. It has already happened behind the rider. Who is this rider? Where is he rushing? A brave warrior standing up to the darkness and pushing through it with his fiery and lightning passion? Or is it Dmitry himself? Well, I'll let you decide. For most of us, it is impossible to comprehend how Beethoven composed his masterpieces being deaf, or how blind pianist Nobuyuki Tsuji perfectly plays Rachmaninoff's concerto. For me, it's a mystery how Dmitry creates his paintings where clear sight and eye-hand coordination seem to be imperative. But I tend to believe now that the perfect soul-hand coordination is way more important and powerful. Soul-hand coordination. Just think about it. With that, we'll need to conclude our show today. I'd like to thank Dmitry and wish him never-ending inspiration, and will be craving his new beautiful creations. I'm sure that he will make his great contribution to the universe of art by sharing his vision of life and the world through the inner eye of his curious and wonderful soul. Till next time, I'm your host, Ade Hanukai. Have a great journey.